We know that travel is surging, and when the sector surges, ad fraud increases. Recent research on the travel industry has highlighted that bots actually make up 80% of all invalid traffic for travel advertisers, which is a significant contrast to the 15 to 30% affecting other industries. Ad fraud is a hidden epidemic that affects every industry engaged in online advertising and eats away aggressively at the bottom line, often under the very noses of those managing the dollars and the results. In fact, ad fraud is the second most popular form of organised crime, and its emergence in travel is no exception. Joining us today is Mathew Ratty, CEO and co-founder of ASX-listed TrafficGuard. Ironically, TrafficGuard was born on an internal project in another business when they fell victim to ad fraud. So there's no one better positioned to enlighten us than the man who had to deal with this scenario himself. Not to mention, he was also a contributor of this year's IAB's Digital Ad Fraud Handbook. So if you're not tech savvy, don't worry, Matt will single-handedly explain ad fraud, how it occurs, and what's at risk because of it. More importantly, he will use industry case studies to provide insights and demonstrate the insidious nature of this crime and how travel marketers can stop it. Please welcome Mathew Ratty.
$127 billion. That's the amount of money that is being lost to ad fraud every single year. And it affects every single one of us, by the way. Fake clicks, fake downloads, fake engagement, fake registration, driving up cost of acquisition of customers, and decreasing profitability. What I've described is not a bad marketing strategy. It's just the effects of ad fraud. And as I said, it affects every single one of us. So I have a feeling that for those of you who spend on advertising, you're about to enjoy some real life examples. But firstly, just some headline numbers. And these numbers won't be lost on you, especially the first one. There's $455 billion being spent in digital per year. And if you ask our friends over at Adobe, they will tell you that 28% of that number, 28% is lost to non-human traffic. That's $127 billion a year lost to non-human traffic. Now, if you ask our friends over at Nielsen's, they'll tell you that the average dollar being invested into the marketing funnel should yield 2.87, call it 3 times ROI. So that's $364 billion of lost revenue potential because of a $127 billion issue. Now, from a capital markets perspective and a valuation perspective, that's $1.8 trillion of capital value erosion from the ecosystem. And travel makes up 8.4% of that digital marketplace. And so people ask me all the time, investors, clients, friends, family, they say, who commits this ad fraud and why do they do it? Well, the answer, ladies and gentlemen, is right here up on this screen. There is just as much money in ad fraud than there is in organised crime. And it's easier. So let me put that another way. If I was to commit crime, I would be going into ad fraud. Because I'm just going to make just as much money, and it's far easier, and it's less likely to get caught. And these fraudsters, by the way, they're extremely intelligent people. They operate in a very large addressable market. They're unlikely to get caught. There's very few tools in the ecosystem right now to detect and prevent. And they run their businesses just like you and I. They take a portion of that profit and they reinvest it into research and development to avoid getting caught. And this was a study done by HP. And so at TrafficGuard, which is the company that I run, we consider ad fraud to be a subset of invalid traffic. So ad fraud is very malicious. It's intent-driven. It's going to get something for something. Usually it's chasing money. Whereas invalid traffic is any traffic that you're paying for which does not lead to any incremental growth. And as marketers, that's what you want. You want incremental growth. That's why you're marketing. And so TrafficGuard runs across all digital ecosystems. So they run across mobile. So for those of you who are interested in mobile app acquisition, we see invalid traffic and fraud across all these different segments. Mobile app, PPC, affiliate, which I know a lot of OTAs use, and social. And we have over 5,000 advertisers that have signed up to TrafficGuard. And what that's allowed us to do is analyze over 100 billion impressions, clicks, events, downloads, transactions. And so we have this always-on detection and prevention invalid traffic system for our 5,000 clients. Now, in travel specifically, especially in your Google paid ads, if you're using Google, we see 48% of that invalid number wasted to bots. You are never going to monetize a bot. A bot is never your friend. Sometimes we see 80%, but on average, we see 48% wasted to bots. 40% of the invalid traffic comes from excessive users excessively clicking on your Google ads just to go and log in. I'll show you an example in a minute. And all that's doing is driving up the cost of acquisition of that client. Sometimes we see clients of OTAs click 20 times in a day just to navigate to the website. Sometimes it's 100 over a weekend. And so 12% of the invalid traffic comes from users, low-quality users with no chance of converting. And so a typical question that I always get asked from OTAs is, why are the bots attacking me? Why me specifically? And the answer is, it's ad fraud. It's malicious. It has intent. If a bot is clicking on your ad, it's doing it for a purpose. And these are the four main purposes, especially within travel. Carding is number one. Price matching, credential stuffing, abandonment, fraud. And so if I was a fraudster and I had a bunch of stolen credit cards, all I'm going to do is I'm going to program a bot to go to your website, and I might use that stolen credit card to purchase a prepaid travel card. Or I'll purchase something, and good luck trying to catch me. Because that bot will be coming from a data center. And data center traffic is, for the most part of it, anonymous. And you won't be able to find them. Another one is price matching. And so if I was a competitor of yours, all I'm going to do is I'm going to send a bot to your website every single day. Every single time that you change something on your website, prices, that bot will come back to me and tell me instantaneously, and I'll adjust mine accordingly. And I'm going to stay competitive with you. And just because I'm such a nice guy, as a fraudster, I might get them to click on your Google ads and just drain your budget at the same time. And then abandonment fraud. And so we have quite a few airlines that have signed up to TrafficGuard. Abandonment fraud's a big one because essentially you can program a bot to go and choose 10 business class tickets, for example, go all the way to the payment page and hold it there for as long as you can. And so the next guy coming through, searching for that business class ticket, there's no inventory. Or you've priced them out of the market. And so these are some of the tactics that bots use. Of course, there's hundreds, by the way, but these are the four main types that we see. So what I showed you just before was ad fraud. That's intent. That's malicious. It's nasty behavior, and it happens on a global basis. This is invalid traffic. This is what we term invalid traffic. And so every single time that you see the pink line and you see the word click, that is a user. This is the same user. That is a user who has Googled. I've had to redact the name because just in case. But I've had to redact the name of this client. But that user is Googling the brand name of this particular OTA. And all they're doing is they're clicking on it, and you can see that the referrer is Google. You can see that there's a click on the left-hand side, so it's a paid click. And on the far right-hand side in green, you'll see the action that they took. And they logged in. So they've Googled the name, they've clicked it, and they've logged in. That's fair. It's fair until it happens over 200 times over a weekend, because that doesn't lead to any incremental growth. And so what you're seeing here is one user over the space of 24 hours, they click, they log in. The next pink line, they click, and then they log in, and they continue to do it. And that solid red line, by the way, is when TrafficGuard kicks into prevention. So this is an actual client who said to us, I'm happy to pay 6 times over a period of 24 hours for these users to log in. Anything else after that, I don't want you to show them an ad for a certain period of time. And so you can see when that solid red line kicks in, 2 rows down, they still go to Google. That must be their homepage. They still go to Google, they still type in the brand keyword, and they still go to the website, but there's no click. And so what that's telling me is that they've just used their organic search term. And so it's cost the company nothing, $0. And what you can't see on the screen, just because I couldn't fit it in, was that this user continued on this journey for an entire week and clicked 90 times over a week just to go and log in. And just because they're so nice, they never converted. And so this particular client would have had to pay Google 90 times their CPC. Yet they only paid 6. And so that reduction in CAC drives the profitability of that particular user. And so I joke all the time with some of our clients that they have the most expensive login button in Melbourne, because it's an expensive process to pay for returning users just to go and log in. And here was another case study from an OTA over in Melbourne. So they came to us originally and they said, we think that there's something going on within our Google ad spend. Can you help us? I said, of course. And they weren't wrong. $3,500 a week was being lost to bots clicking on their ads for the same purposes that I just described before. And then they had a problem of returning users just going to log in. And it turns out that they were losing almost $250,000 a year. $250,000 a year being lost to this sort of activity. Of course, they're a client, they've kicked in prevention, and they've had an 85% decrease in invalid traffic, a 6 times ROI. And I just read in the paper the other day that they're just expecting record revenue and record profits. Obviously, I didn't charge them enough for our service. And so these numbers won't be lost on this audience. Everyone loves to book through their travel app. You've just surpassed a record. You've just beaten the 2019 record. $798 billion was booked through travel apps in 2022. And a recent study by eMarketer suggests that 58% of smartphone users prefer to book through the app. I'm one of those users. And so there is a drive for the travel industry to have their app on people's landscape, people's phone. But what if I was to tell you that 45% of mobile app installs in the travel sector are invalid and should never have been paid for? The installs that occur are either fraudulent or they have been misattributed. If you're using a number of partners to drive installs, it's quite common for partners to steal off of each other. Or it's come from organic. So if I told you to go and download a particular app right now, you'd have gone to the App Store, you would have downloaded it. And so that's organic. It hasn't cost the advertiser anything. And so clients come to me and say all the time, Matt, why should I care about an invalid install? Because I don't pay on the install. I only pay when someone purchased something. And so if they've purchased something, it can't be fraud. That's a very fair argument, by the way, until this happens. We call this the snowball effect of misattribution. And so if I was an organic user, if I went to the App Store right now and downloaded an app, an airline carrier app, and I booked a flight on that app tonight, that's an organic user. It's cost the company $0. But fraudsters are smart. What they're able to do is they're able to inject a click at the very last millisecond of that install into the advertising journey. And they are able to fool the advertiser and the mobile measurement platform to attribute that install to them because they were doing it on a last click basis. And so if you're an advertiser, you think that partner A drove that install. You don't know it's organic. And so when there's an event and someone has booked something, that event is then attributed to that install, which is attributed to that partner, which had nothing to do with that install. And so that's why you should care about invalid installs, because an invalid install which has an event will lead to an invalid event. It's an event that you should never pay for. And you can imagine that out of the billions of apps across the world, how much have actually been stolen to ad fraud? The answer is a lot. And in the travel sector, it's 45%. And this is an example of a traffic source doing exactly that. Every single time you see a red circle, that is something that has been flagged as invalid for a particular reason. Either anomaly fingerprint IP, patent time series IP. It's quite wacko stuff. It's done by TrafficGuard. But you can see on the right-hand side, the Google Play Store is saying that it's actually coming from organic. And so there's no click associated with this install. There's no paid click associated with this install. And yet every single time you see a red, they were actually attributed that install.
So, what's
Sorry.
happening with your numbers?
What numbers?
What numbers?
Thank you. And so now I'm about to play a video for you. It's going to give me a 45-second break to take a drink of water. But you're going to find this very relevant to the next slide.
So, what's happening with your numbers?
What numbers?
What numbers? Lucas.
In India?
Yeah.
Is this Ebbo or Oscar? Huh. Okay. Well, we have there's a little issue that we're looking into with subscriber numbers being bullshit. Well, not bullshit, but a little bit bullshit.
What does a little bit bullshit mean?
Well, maybe we discovered a metrics error that has overstated our subs in India by quite a, like if there were two Indias, it would make sense.
So as soon as I saw that video, by the way, I thought I have to play it to this audience because it's very relevant to what you're seeing on the screen now. And so when clients come to us, especially in mobile, and they say, I think there may be something wrong with our numbers, this is the first thing I look at. There was a client that came to us and said, I think there could be ad fraud. We've read about it. We don't know how to prove it. And so we ran a trial with them. And it turns out that over a 2-week period, they had 3.5 times the population. They had 1.1 billion clicks in 2 weeks. They were only operating in a market with 300 million people. That means that over a 2-week period, every single person in that country clicked on this ad 3.6 times, over 3 times. That's a fantastic marketing strategy. But what you're seeing here, by the way, is just what we call click spam. It is designed to enter the mobile measurement platform and randomly get attributed. It's just all fraud. You don't have 1.14 billion people clicking on your ads. That is an inflated metric. It's a metric which we should all care about because it turns out that 70% of their installs were misattributed to these clicks. And so why should you care about all of this? Well, you should care because you're all marketers and you care about incremental growth. And your budget is extremely precious because you don't have unlimited funding. And so you want to claw back that invalid traffic. You don't want to pay for it. And you want to reinvest that money into the marketing funnel to get real users with a real propensity to convert into a paying customer. And that's why you should care about this. You want to reduce your cost of acquisition of clients. You want to increase your lifetime value of these clients. And you want to grow with confidence with a clean traffic system. Now, as you can tell, I could probably speak about this for days, but we've just hit 0 on that clock. So, just to summarize, $127 billion issue. That's how much is being wasted on ad fraud. Fake clicks, fake installs, fake registrations, fake engagement, increasing the cost of acquisitions of a client and decreasing the profit. And I'm hoping that today I've educated you enough to warrant a look into your own numbers. And so, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to mingling in the crowd.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Take a seat. I don't know about you guys, but I find this side of things fascinating and frightening all at the same time. So Matt, tell us a little, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about TrafficGuard number 1. That was like where it all began.
Yeah, TrafficGuard number 1 started in what we call the matrix room. And it's quite a scary room because it's a room full of data scientists. And so I don't have a data science background. And so it took me a while to actually understand what the hell they were talking about. I knew ad fraud existed, but we were basically born out of another company. We ran an affiliate marketing company, and we were subject to this sort of ad fraud. And the reason why we knew about it was because clients weren't paying us at the end of the day. So we're driving all these installs, we're buying traffic off of other people, and yet we discovered that we were a victim of ad fraud ourselves. And so when that happened, I thought, well, if it's happening to us, it's happening to a lot of people around the world. And so that's how TrafficGuard was born as a V1. We just started in mobile apps specifically. And so our first clients were Gojek, which was the equivalent of Uber over in Southeast Asia. And then Rappi, which is an on-demand delivery service. And then after that, we just evolved into the other segments in the market. And then today, we have over 5,000 clients around the world. And so that's how we have evolved.
Nice. And when we talk about ad fraudsters making money, what sort of money are we talking about? Not that I'm looking for a career change, but just curious as to the sort of volume that we're looking at here. What sort of crime?
On average, we're talking tens of millions per group. At the top end, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. And so there was a landmark case with Uber. So Uber was suing their marketing agency called Fetch for about 30 million US for fake downloads. And so Fetch was like, well, we just subbed it out to the ecosystem. And so there was a group that made over $30 million just on Uber themselves. And then there was another company, I call them companies because they operate like companies, but they're fraud syndicate rings. And so there was another fraud syndicate ring which made $40 million. That's got taken down by the FBI. But it took them 3 years to track them down. And so whilst there are fraud syndicate rings that are getting caught, majority do not get caught because it's hard to go and find these guys. And so TrafficGuard's role is we don't care who the fraud is coming from. It's our role to protect our clients to make sure they're just not paying for it. And so if they're not paying for the fraud because they're not attributed, well, then the fraudster is just going to go and target someone else that's not protected.
Frightening stuff. Do we have any questions from the audience? And there is no such thing as a silly question. I know with topics like this, sometimes people can feel a little reluctant, but go for gold.
Hey, so my question is, as an advertiser, like some of those brands you're talking about that you worked with have obviously huge budgets. So the difference in what you'd lose if you're spending 1 million on digital versus 10 million, is there a level where it's just a cost of business, and if you're spending 1 million and you're losing 28%, that 280, the amount of resources and time you would have to invest into managing potential ad fraud, where it's just not worthwhile, as opposed to, I understand, when you're at that level of 10 million, when you're losing substantial more money, that it's more worth the effort. Do you sort of think that there is a level where it's just a cost of business of digital advertising, or
Sure, that's a very good question, by the way. The short answer is no. The longer answer is that the majority of our clients are actually SMEs who are spending anywhere between $1,000 a month on Google or tens of thousands of dollars on mobile ad networks, and then it ranges all the way to $10 million a month. And so, as I was saying in the presentation, like, ad fraud doesn't really discriminate on budget. They attack and attack and attack. And so, on average, we see around about 20% invalid traffic going through at any one point in time. Of course, there's going to be outliers, like sometimes 5%, but I think the lowest we've seen is around about 5% of the budget. And so what I would suggest is having an anti-fraud vendor, because if it's all automated in the background, then you don't have to invest all that time because your anti-fraud vendor is doing it for you.
And would an anti-fraud vendor be something that the brand needs to look at to do for themselves, or is that more agency land because they're the ones with placement?
Yeah, both actually. So with brands, so our go-to-market is very brand direct, but obviously when you deal with brands, you also deal with their agencies. And so the agencies are getting more and more and more involved. I think on trial at the moment we have around about 10 or 12 agencies trialing as a group deal. And so both is the answer.
And is there anything we can do to prevent it or to try and detect?
Of course.
Where do we start?
Sign up to TrafficGuard.
There we go. I've got one more question if no one else has one. We've got a microphone down here. This gentleman here. Thanks, Trace.
We already see some level of invalid clicks coming through and measured by Google. Do you see a big difference in your numbers versus theirs?
Yeah, a significant and stark difference. And so I think Google does a pretty good job at removing what we call like duplicate clicks, which is, I think you know what duplicate click is. But in terms of non-incremental engagement and invalid traffic, Google will not do anything about that sort of activity. So yeah, usually what we see with our clients is there will be some level of invalid click detection from Google, and TrafficGuard sits a lot higher than that. And so that delta is the benefit of using TrafficGuard.
Sounds all worth it to me. We are out of time. I'm so sorry. Actually, quick. We'll do one quick last question. Tracy's really got her steps up today, I tell you what.
Hi.
Hello.
Just wondering if you see levels of fraud different across different industries, or if it's fairly agnostic, and are there reasons for that?
Yeah. So so the answer is that we see different percentages across different industries. In sports betting, for example, it's quite high because the cost of a click on sports betting is extremely high. And also they have a lot of returning users, like serial gamblers. And so it's a very expensive process to go through. The latest study that we just did within TrafficGuard is 97% of that particular brand's budget was being eaten up by returning users, which is a massive amount. And in terms of like travel, as I said in my preso, like 40% of, well, 48% of that paid media spend is being eaten up by bot activity, and 40% by excessive engagement. Legal practitioners, like we see quite a bit there, because they're paying about $100 a click. And so if I was a competitor of yours, I'd just sit there every morning over my coffee and just blow your budget before I step out the door. And so it ranges. It ranges across the entire board.
Some people are evil. Some people need better things to do with their time, don't they?
They do.
That was fascinating. I really, really enjoyed that. I hope you guys did too. Please jump on the app and rate this session. And if you, while you're there, have a look at the agenda. Coming up next in this room, we have resilience and honesty with Carnival Cruises. But otherwise, Matt, please, thank Matt for his time and all of that.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. And we'll see you in a second for Carnival Cruises.